The program's based on the physical activity guidelines for Americans, which is 2.5 hours per week of moderate physical activity. Again, at a level where you can barely carry on a conversation but not sing. So that's an easy way to tell. So 2.5 hours is the minimum, and that's the 8 Wonders Trail. Or you can go up to 6 hours, and then there's 2 trails in between that, just based on what your team decides they want to work toward. If you're brand new to physical activity, you're pretty sedentary, you might want to start with that 8 Wonders Trail and just work toward that basic minimum goal or whatever your team decides.
Research shows that just a little bit of exercise will produce a happiness boost. This year's Walk Kansas, K-State Research and Extension's 8-week health initiative to promote personal health and well-being through physical activity and education will focus on shifting habits and boosting happiness. On today's Sound Living, the benefits of exercise and healthy eating. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman. Walk Kansas 2024 begins on March 31st and runs through May 25th. State leader for the program and Northeast Area Family and Consumer Science Specialist Sharolyn Jackson says one of the goals of the program is to encourage participants to be more active throughout the day. Sharolyn, registration for Walk Kansas is officially underway. The website is there, and we should mention it is a redesigned website, so if they haven't been to it for a while, it does have a different look.
It does have a different look. We're excited to give a bit of a freshening up to our website and includes all the information that you'll need to get registered for Walk Kansas this year.
This is a team challenge, but it's also something you can do individually.
That's right. The team portion of it, there's 4 different trails or challenges that you can choose from, and people will register as part of a 4 to 6 member team. Or you can choose the Purple Power Trail and just walk solo.
And it is $10 per person. That's the registration fee.
That's right. It's $10 for each person. And just wanted to go over a little bit about what's all included in that, because there are a number of things that we're offering for that fee. Of course, there's access to our Walk Kansas portal where you can log your activity minutes or steps, and you can also communicate with your team members. We highly encourage that you also keep track of fruits and vegetables that you consume and put the cups of those that you're eating there, as that really goes hand in hand with our Walk Kansas goals. And then there's a weekly newsletter that includes educational and motivational information about physical activity, general health and chronic disease prevention or management, and nutrition, and then a recipe that supports that nutrition message each week. And we also have a number of links to helpful resources, links to some webinars, like last year we did the Med Instead of Meds, a 6-week series. Those links to those webinars are there that this year's participants can certainly have access to, and as well as some other webinars we've done with K-State Research and Extension over the past couple of years. And then we have some new ones as well. So we have 3 topics identified for this year. Those are the science of happiness and looking at how physical activity plays a role in that. The second one's going to be on a topic of basic self-care for your feet and choosing the best shoe for your activities, as it's really important to keep those feet feeling well and doing what we need them to do. And then the third one is on a focus on habit shift and how to make tiny habits count.
And that's really one of the reasons that this is an 8-week program, is the fact that it does give people an opportunity to make that shift.
That's right. And these are not habits that are difficult. They're not things that are going to require a lot of effort or willpower. They're just ways to weave them into your day, to link them to things you already do. And there's a real science behind habit formation and behavior change. So when you establish the habit, that behavior just becomes automatic. So we're going to talk about some things in this seminar like your habit loop. If there's a habit that you'd like to change, you can break that down into your habit loop and those micro steps there to determine what's the cue that's nudging you to make that particular behavior, and then think about how you can change it. We'll also look at some barriers to establishing habits, like things in the environment or your resources or support you might have, or some people and relationships, or what that barrier might be. And then look at a couple of ways to address those barriers. So maybe that barrier to getting a couple of short walks in during your workday is that your shoes that you wear for work are not comfortable for walking. So keep a pair of walking shoes in your office or your workplace. Those are just simple things, but if we can become accustomed to knowing what is going to help us nudge us just a little bit further to that habit, that's the kind of thing we're going to look at. Our habits actually derive from implicit memory, and those are the things we do unconsciously. So if you think about activities like, we just know how to tie our shoe. We know how to ride a bike. We don't think about the steps involved. And so when you can get to a point where it becomes that type of a habit, you just do it as part of your day. And even a 1-degree change in your habits can have a profound change in your life. So it doesn't have to be a huge habit shift. They've also discovered that most people who are successful at habit change have made it as easy as possible. So it becomes a part of your habit loop instead of that battle with willpower.
I think one of the things we run into is sometimes just the motivation, and I think that's maybe where the team aspect comes into play. Sometimes not necessarily having to walk together every day, but just that accountability factor.
We've had a number of participants tell us, my team's counting on me. So that was what kind of nudged them to go out and get that walk or do that activity. And so, that is a really great component. We can support each other and encourage each other.
You talked about the habit forming, and I always think about brushing your teeth because that's something we learn at an early age, and we do it. Some people first thing when they get up in the morning, some people right before they head out the door. But it's something that is built into our schedule, and it's become a habit. And we feel weird if we don't do it.
Exactly.
And it really doesn't take that long to form a habit, does it? I mean, it takes a little bit of time, but it's really just the repetition and doing it over and over.
And if you can tie it to something that you're already doing in your day, like brushing your teeth, maybe that's a good time to just practice a balance exercise. Stand on one foot for a bit and then alternate to the other. Same thing when you're standing in line at the grocery store. You can practice some balance exercises that way, and it's just linking it to some other activity, something else that you do in your day on a regular basis.
I know one of the things my wife and I have started doing is we park as far away from wherever we're going as we can, and it seems odd to do that. And I know a lot of people kind of look at you, this is like 1,000 spaces up here, dude. Why are you clear right there? But those extra steps throughout the day add up as because it seems like everybody has something on their wrist now that can track their steps, but it really does add a couple of 500 steps a day, and that makes a difference.
It does. You're kind of stealing some of our information here for newsletters. It's going to be one of our tips.
I'm sure they will have forgotten by the time it comes out, right? The newsletters, though, really are helpful, and I know that people go back a number of years because sometimes they're just looking for something specific. You mentioned the med instead of meds, and I've heard a lot of people talking about that recently. It's kind of resurfaced again. And I think maybe it's the time of year we're heading into where you eat a lot more fruits, vegetables, that sort of thing anyway.
Right.
But it's something that I think a lot of people see themselves being able to do. And as I age, I see a lot of people moving more towards that because they're just not as hungry as they were when they were younger.
Well, and there's so much research now that links what's healthy for our body physically is also good for us mentally. And there's a lot of things that interact there. And the Mediterranean eating style is part of the mind diet that promotes, healthy mind, healthy brain. And so there's a lot of crossover.
You hear a lot about superfoods and things like that. And I always think of blueberries because that's one that sticks in my mind as helping with your memory and cognitive.
Yes. So. Blueberries and dark leafy greens are ones that they're looking at to help boost memory and brain power.
As you go through this, you get a lot of feedback as well from participants. You're finding that they are actually taking advantage of the idea of eating more fruits and vegetables, drinking more water. They're doing the things that we're recommending, which is kind of nice feedback.
It really is. And when you start to write it down, that makes a big difference too. And you realize, we've heard from participants, like I've realized now I have to start eating fruits and vegetables first thing in the morning or I don't get enough throughout the day. And so it just gives a heightened awareness, and it's something that we already know, that we've been certainly had good information to support eating lots of fruits and vegetables. But when you have to write it down and you are more accountable, then you follow through and make it happen.
It makes it a little easier when you're going through the grocery store as well, because you're starting to understand that I need to not only get fruits and vegetables, but I need a variety of colors. I need some that I can eat as just a single serving, some that will be more than a single serving. And that's the other thing I think people learn is what really is a serving, because that can be rather confusing.
Right. What's a serving? What's the recommendation? I think rather than getting too hung up on serving size is the recommendations are in forms of cups. So like you need to just roughly, for the average person, 3 cups of vegetables, 2 cups of fruits per day. And so to focus on that, being able to get that kind of quantity. And then that leads to other kinds of really good behaviors in terms of you fill up more on the fruits and vegetables, so you're able to balance out the other foods a little bit more appropriately.
I see a lot of people turning to those as kind of their snacks. Used to be maybe we did something not quite as healthy, but when you need to get those extra fruits and vegetables in, that's a great way to do it.
Exactly. It is a great way to do it.
In terms of the science of happiness, one of your webinars, that just sounds so fascinating to me. And I know it's from someone that did, I think, a series last year as well on sleep. So
yes,
it's going to be a good presentation.
It's an excellent presentation. Michelle Lane is a certified nurse leader and health coach, and she's the senior director for community wellness and corporate health at North Kansas City Hospital. And she was the presenter for one of our webinars earlier this year, Sleep is a Superpower, which will certainly make that available to our Walk Kansas participants as well. But there are a lot of links to happiness and health. And so we know, and this presentation is all based on the science related to it. We know that happy people are healthier, they have lower rates of cardiovascular disease, better immunity, they heal faster after injuries, they're more likely to eat more healthfully, and they live longer. So there's a lot associated there. We probably need this more than we ever have in today's world. So she'll talk about what does happiness look like and how do you define that, which basically is how satisfied you are with your life and how good you feel on a daily basis, and looking at what are the things that you can do to boost your happiness and to think about it as a muscle and how you develop a muscle. So what are some of those things that you can do and that you have control over, because we don't have control over everything. And of course, we're going to talk about physical activity and the role that it plays in happiness and overall health.
Well, that's a big part of it, isn't it? Because even just exercising for 10 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, makes a big difference in your outlook.
Exactly. And there's some research that supports that even a little bit of exercise will produce a happiness boost. And they found that those who were physically active for as little as 10 minutes a day or who worked out only once a week had higher levels of happiness than people who never exercised. So it has a pretty powerful impact.
And I think even how you feel sometimes from a health standpoint, what you eat makes a difference too, because I think we all know that Thanksgiving, Christmas, when we have the big, huge meals, we're pretty weighed down afterwards.
Right.
And you do get kind of sedentary. You don't really want to move a lot, but when you've had just a little bit, you almost get a boost from the food.
Choosing the good, healthful foods too to give you that boost. And so, yeah, it's all about balance and making some good, basic habits and choices.
Go through the process one more time for getting registered, and then again when everything kicks off. And I'm assuming that we would like him to be ready to go when it starts, but there's also a little bit of leeway there as well.
Sure. The registration is open right now, and in most local units, the registration goes through April the 5th. And so if you hear about it and the program started, just go ahead and check, and I'm certainly willing to help get people connected to a location where the registration is still open. Just go to walkkansas.org and find the registration link there and be ready to sign up a team or your solo walker status, whatever you choose, and go through the registration process. And on March 31st, the logging site will be open and you can start logging physical activity and fruits and vegetables, either minutes or steps of physical activity. It's your choice.
If you're doing it as a team, you'll have a captain, and the captain registers everyone?
The captain does register everybody. You can always add to that team later. So you have to have at least 4 on that team for a captain to register. And so they'll go in, fill out the basic information, contact information, and then those on the team will get an invitation email. They can follow through and complete their registration.
And they're also going to decide whether they want to go maybe the 2.5 hours per week or
Right.
the 6 hours per week.
Right. The program's based on the Physical Activity Guidelines for Americans, which is 2.5 hours per week of moderate physical activity. Again, at a level where you can barely carry on a conversation but not sing. So that's an easy way to tell. So 2.5 hours is the minimum, and that's the 8 Wonders Trail. Or you can go up to 6 hours, and then there's 2 trails in between that, just based on what your team decides they want to work toward. If you're brand new to physical activity, you're pretty sedentary, you might want to start with that 8 Wonders Trail and just work toward that basic minimum goal, or whatever your team decides.
That's K-State Research and Extension Family and Consumer Science Specialist for the Northeast area and State Leader of Walk Kansas, Sharolyn Jackson. Again, this year's Walk Kansas begins March 31st and runs through May 25th, but registration is available beyond the official start date. For more information, go to walkkansas.org or contact your county or district extension office. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman, and this is the K-State Radio Network.